Next on the news. They smelled gas before the house exploded, but it wasn't soon enough.
Just a boom. It was a boom, the house shook, and then it's like, what happened?
Bronx residents relocated tonight, what their church is doing to help. Then a vigil in the middle of Times Square. New Yorkers coming together to remember a woman the city failed to protect, murdered in the subway. And you may have ordered those free COVID tests from the White House, but that doesn't mean you'll be swabbing anytime soon. Postal Service shortages backing up delivery dates. Plus this.
I see a 1600 on my SAT score, but there were plenty of failures that came before that.
A perfect score, but his parents say he's not exactly the perfect child. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. A Catholic church opening its doors to help displaced parishioners after an explosion and building collapse in the Longwood section of the Bronx. St. Athanasius is just feet from where a possible gas leak caused the blast that sent people running for their lives. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the latest from the scene.
Firefighters, emergency crews, and the buildings department investigating the cause of this massive explosion. Officials say someone called 911 saying they smelled gas just moments before the home shot up in flames. The people living on this side of the block have been displaced and relocated by the Red Cross, and what remains of the home now is in a pile.
We actually had the neighbor's door in front of our house.
A blast so powerful it blew a front door and shattered glass across the street into Nelson Roman's front yard.
It was just a boom. It was a boom, the house shook, and then it's like, what happened?
Nelson is still in shock over Tuesday's explosion that happened in the home attached to his brother's. He's thankful he was at work at the time. 10 families were forced out of their homes by the explosion. Shocking body camera footage shows police officers running into the destroyed building to rescue a woman trapped under furniture, her home in ruins.
The 5 officers that were sent to the hospital because of smoke inhalation, they're heroes. They save lives.
Councilman Rafael Salamanca Jr. says those officers have since been released from the hospital, and now the community is looking to another hero to help them through this recovery.
When tragedies hit, we always depend on faith-based organizations to step up. And that's exactly what St. Athanasius Church did. The doors never closed.
All of the families displaced were parishioners of St. Athanasius.
This is Juan from St. Athanasius Church.
Juan Sotomayor, who works at the church, remembers back to the 70s when the Bronx was burning. Negligent landlords were setting their properties on fire to collect insurance money, and St. Athanasius remained a symbol of hope.
The church was pretty much the only building that stood, and so therefore has always been a beacon. Again, history repeated itself.
Though the blast made his home tremble, Nelson says his faith is not shaken.
We just look for God, for peace, for love, and just, the strength to endure.
Emergency management crews are working with those 10 families to see if they can get back into their homes and salvage any belongings before 4 buildings here on Fox Street are completely demolished. One person remains in critical condition. In the Longwood section of the Bronx, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
You can help those families without a home. Just visit archny.org to donate directly to Catholic charities. Meanwhile, the city's latest subway shove death is hitting close to home for many New Yorkers. They gathered in Times Square to remember Michelle Go and denounce anti-Asian violence.
There's a rainbow in the sky.
From New York City to San Francisco, vigils held for Michelle Go, the 40-year-old California native who was killed this weekend after being pushed in front of an oncoming train in a Times Square subway station.
Could have been me, could have been my friend, and so I think it just hit a little differently.
Pam Yang, one of hundreds who gathered in Times Square Tuesday night, holding flowers, candles, and signs denouncing anti-Asian violence. But while crimes against Asians have gone up in the city, police have not deemed this latest subway shove a hate crime. Benjamin Way of the group Asians Fighting Injustice does.
We're being targeted, and so this just hits so close to home. Just another death, another passing. It's painful.
Mayor Eric Adams, who at first came under fire for his response to the crime, is now vowing to make the subway safer by putting more cops and outreach workers underground. But Pam says she still doesn't feel safe in her own city.
It's a very pervasive threat that's constantly like bubbling under the surface because you have no idea who it's coming from. You have no idea if there's a specific time of day that it's going to be worse than another. So there's no parameters around which you can kind of set yourself up for safety.
The suspect, a 61-year-old man, is being held without bail. A judge ordered him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation during his arraignment Wednesday from Bellevue Hospital. Meanwhile, the MTA is now looking into installing platform barriers in the subway. Some cities, like Paris and Hong Kong, have them, but New York City transit leaders say it would be a complicated and expensive safety solution, costing in the billions. Plus, it would likely take years to install. While New York's personal battle against the Omicron variant continues to head in the right direction, that's not the coronavirus forecast across the country. Nationwide, cases are continuing to spread and fast. The U.S. is reporting a daily average of nearly 800,000 COVID cases per day. That's nearly 3 times the levels seen last winter. And while the Omicron variant may cause less severe effects than previous variants, health experts say 50 to 300,000 more Americans could die by mid-March. The Biden administration is hoping to catch those cases early, launching a free COVID tests for all website. It's offering millions of at-home rapid tests to Americans free of charge. However, there is a catch. The delivery of the tests rests in the hands of the U.S. Postal Service, which has been seeing huge mail delays across the country. Listen to what people had to say in Maryland who haven't gotten their regular mail in weeks.
There are households where there has been no mail delivered for days. Now, if we can't get the mail, how are we going to get these COVID tests?
Health experts suggest ordering the tests before you need them. Just don't expect overnight delivery. The White House says most tests will ship in 7 to 12 days and not until late January. They say the tests should be used in 3 situations: if you have symptoms, at least 5 days after exposure, or before gathering indoors with high-risk people. And while we're on the topic of free, starting next week, the Biden administration says they will be having a mass mask giveaway. The plan is to make 400 million N95 masks available to Americans. But is it too little too late for cities like New York, already seeing a decrease in cases? According to the White House, the masks will be made available at a number of local pharmacies and community health centers, adding that the program will be fully up and running by early February. People looking to pick up the free masks will be limited to 3 per person. Despite the tests and masks, the president faces a mixed report card when it comes to grading his first year in office. Karen Kafa has those marks now and also his hopes for next year.
January 2022 has already been a challenging month for President Joe Biden. New COVID cases at new peaks, inflation reaching a 39-year high, voting rights legislation mired in a Democratic Party standoff, his approval ratings underwater. Biden's first year in office has been marked by the uncertainty of a pandemic and politics.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
But when he entered the White House on January 20th, 2021, with Democrats in control of both houses of Congress, expectations were high.
They would wipe out the coronavirus pandemic as a serious problem. They would restore the economy and Washington would work again. But those 3 expectations really hit sort of into reality.
By March, Biden and Democrats signed off on the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, sending stimulus checks to millions of pandemic-rattled Americans as vaccination numbers picked up. And in June, Biden took his first presidential trip abroad, touting renewed U.S. stability.
The United States is there.
But U.S. foreign policy standing was rocked in August with a chaotic completion of U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan and a Taliban takeover.
Ultimately, Biden made the call that the United States needs to focus on other major challenges.
Those challenges include warming relations between U.S. adversaries Russia and China. Back at home, Biden signed off on a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure plan in November. The victory clouded by progressive and moderate Democrats clashing over his sweeping social safety net proposal. By the holidays, the Omicron variant cast a dark shadow, with even the fully vaccinated urged to take precautions. 1 year, even a turbulent one, doesn't necessarily define an entire presidency, according to Jordan Tama of the American University School of International Service.
The economy can change dramatically. The pandemic may no longer be a very salient issue in another couple of years.
And Laura Brown, director of the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University, says a sharper focus on those two issues could help the Biden administration ahead.
I think why so many Americans are frustrated is that they don't have a sense of his through line.
Biden and Democrats with less than 10 months to go until November's midterm elections. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
The president's first year is wrapping up just as tensions are heating up between Russia and Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is urging Russian President Vladimir Putin to choose the peaceful path when it comes to Crimea. Blinken's trip to Kiev comes as Russia continues to amass thousands of troops near Ukraine's border. Moscow insists it has no plans to invade, but in exchange for de-escalation, Russia is demanding several guarantees, including a ban on Ukraine from joining NATO. Talks with Russia are set for later this week, and the United States has authorized an additional $200 million in security aid for Ukraine. There's a lot more news headed your way. It's called the Northern Triangle. It's where the majority of migrants trying to get into the U.S. are coming from. We'll show you. And cell phones causing chaos at airports, why a cell upgrade could do just that.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
We haven't heard about caravans in a while, but that doesn't mean migrants have stopped making their way across Central America with hopes of reaching the United States. Those hopes dashed for more than 400 people this week. Guatemala announcing they are turning a caravan back to Honduras for not meeting entry requirements. One of the key requirements is they must have a negative COVID-19 test result. Last month, a federal court ordered the Biden administration to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, a Trump-era plan that's affecting conditions along the U.S.-Mexico border. One aid agency says violence and trafficking at the border are becoming more and more common, and migrants from 3 Central American countries that make up the majority of those fleeing north are most at risk. The Migrant Protection Protocols, more commonly known as the Remain in Mexico policy, requires migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. to wait in Mexico until their asylum cases are decided. But poverty, corruption, crime, violence, and environmental destruction has caused 2 million people to flee their homelands since 2014, the majority coming from the Central American region called the Northern Triangle.
It's no secret that El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala form part of a war-torn region from the 1980s into the 1990s. And the legacy of civil war still informs the kind of violence that we see in the region today.
Paul Angelo has spent years in Central America and just returned from a visit to Honduras and El Salvador. He says conditions on the ground are alarming.
Corruption is the reason why people do not have formal economy jobs or access to health care, why people don't have bank accounts, why people don't have property rights, why people build their homes and farms on land that is vulnerable to erosion or Category 4 or 5 hurricanes.
Northern Triangle countries are among the poorest in the Western Hemisphere. An estimated 300,000 flee the region every year. Of the 3.4 million Central Americans living in the United States, 85% of them are from the Northern Triangle.
It's been quite of a journey.
Author and journalist Carmen Molina Tamacas immigrated from El Salvador 10 years ago and has documented the stories of fellow immigrants in a new book called Salvi Yorkers.
How desperate is a mother here about the fear that about the children down there that she pays a coyote to make that trip. People is risking everything because even though being in the shadows being discriminated, being like in the margins of the society in the United States is better than have to live what they are living in their countries.
The Biden administration is focusing on those living conditions in an effort to get the growing crisis under control. But so far, it's had little impact.
In order to unlock the human potential of the region and to stimulate the kind of activism that is going to get real results, you have to first meet people's basic needs. And you have to make them feel empowered. And that is a space where the United States can be most helpful.
The overflow at the border is further complicated by streams of Haitians joining caravans from other parts of Central and South America who are also planning to make the hazardous journey. Despite the dangers, Tamakas says when people are desperate, they won't be deterred.
I think people is always looking for the best and hoping for the best, and people is working, so they don't stop working to get the best for them and their families.
The Remain in Mexico policy is expanding along the southern border to comply with the court order. The Biden administration is asking the Supreme Court to step in to end the program. Turning now to another Supreme Court battle, United States bishops consider abortion one of the most significant human rights abuses of our time. The question tonight, will you take a stand? You'll have the chance to later this week. That's when thousands will head to Washington, D.C. on Friday for the March for Life, the largest annual human rights demonstration in the world. The event brings pro-life supporters together to protest the anniversary of the Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortion in all 50 states. But the event is not just a protest. It's about celebrating life, every life, from the moment of conception to natural death. Are you thinking you might want to go to the march in person? There's still time. Consider this your last-minute call to join in the fight for life. The Diocese of Brooklyn is offering round-trip service to the nation's capital on January 21st. The bus will leave the diocesan office at 310 Prospect Park West in Brooklyn at 6:30 a.m. Each seat costs $25. So grab your tickets now. Just contact Martha Hernandez at 718-281-9540 or email her at mhernandez@diobrook.org for more details. And this Thursday before the march, make sure you don't miss the National Prayer Vigil for Life. You can watch it right here on Net TV. Brooklyn's Bishop Robert Brennan will be there. We'll be airing it live starting at 5 p.m. on January 20th. And if you are flying to the march, you may want to check with your carrier. There could be quite a few cancellations in the near future. Airlines are sounding the alarm on 5G cell service near airports, warning the rollout, which had been scheduled for Wednesday, would have caused chaos at airports across America, triggering serious safety issues and disrupting around 1,000 flights a day. Isabel Rosales has the story.
Fears of an aviation crisis temporarily averted. Verizon and AT&T are now delaying activation on 5G high-speed service around certain airports.
We have to ensure that these airplanes are not going to be interfered with.
The same way a walkie-talkie or a baby monitor can pick up errant radio waves, airlines and plane manufacturers worry new 5G signals could interfere with key flight safety instruments. As a commercial pilot of 40 years, Captain Jim Schilling understands the potential safety risk.
If I determine the risk is nothing I can manage, then I have to reject the aircraft.
Executives from the largest U.S. airlines penned an urgent letter Monday to the White House saying, to be blunt, the nation's commerce will grind to a halt, and warning upwards of 1,000 flights could be disrupted per day should 5G be launched.
Well, the passengers will be safe, but it will be really damaging to customers.
AT&T and Verizon insist fears are unfounded.
I think it's important that we take the time to study and understand.
Biden's administration is in talks with federal agencies, wireless carriers, airlines, and manufacturers to find a solution without sacrificing safety.
Certainly, minimizing flight disruptions, ensuring safety in travel is a top priority.
I'm Isabel Rosales reporting.
Still to come on Currents News, we're going back in time with the help of some Brooklyn Catholic school kids. Why they were dressed like Madonna and Run DMC. And no one's perfect. Well, except for this kid. kind of, maybe on paper. We'll explain when we come back. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. All right, cue Bonnie Tyler and these kids from St. Bernard's. They brought it back to the 80s this week for their 80th day of school. And in true 80s fashion, they even made a music video. A favorite decade for many. These guys had to learn all about one of the greatest ages, big hair, bright leggings, and bling. And they pulled it off, maybe even giving their parents a run for their money. So the 80s are retro now. That blows my mind. But here's another story that does. Imagine this, getting a perfect SAT score. That's a reality for one student from California who can now go to any college he wants. But his parents say he's really not that perfect. What teenager could be? Brittany Hope has the story.
Apoorv Mishra is a senior at Davis Senior High School. The 17-year-old has his own typical teenage imperfections.
Not clean right now.
Including a disheveled room.
This is my bed. It's not set right now because I was, again, late for school. So.
And a problem getting out of it.
Every day I have to fight with him because he is not getting up on time.
His chemistry teacher says he's been caught falling asleep in class.
He's one that maybe doesn't get the top scores, interestingly enough.
But his parents have plenty of room for forgiveness, because how could a teenager be perfect?
In the end, I see a 1600 on my SAT score, but there were plenty of failures that came before that, right?
You heard that right. Apoorv got a perfect score on his SAT exam.
This is my total score, which is a 1600, and the percentile that it lands me in, it's 99 percentile.
Every single question answered correctly. The College Board, which administers the exam, says only a fraction of a percentage of test takers achieve this.
Once you sat in the chair, was there a question or a section that you were a little bit nervous for?
The first section, for sure. The reading sections, they're reading these long passages, and then they ask you at some point in time, like, what was the meaning of the intro paragraph? Or what did the author want to convey in this section? And you're like, well, I don't know.
Apoorv said he prepared whenever he had free time.
When I did the SAT, I was actually studying right here.
But what free time? He's vice captain of the robotics team, student body president, and
recently I was able to take up like a job as a software engineering intern.
All that and a perfect SAT score? I think that forgives the messy bed.
I have seen him. I was not very happy the way he was preparing for this exam, and according to me, he was not giving proper time, enough time.
His parents say they are so proud of their son.
You can be definitely keeping a track of their progress, but at the same time, they deserve your love and trust.
Again, that was Brittany Hope reporting. And those smarts run in the family. His older brother is a junior at Harvard, and he says as long as he's taller than his little brother, he wins. Always a competition, right? And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.